But yeah, just for the audience, kind of give your background.
Yeah, so I'm a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt out of Phoenix, Arizona. I've also acquired my pro card in natural bodybuilding as well as obtained an elite level in drug-free powerlifting. Along with that too, again, born and raised in Phoenix, but also just moved to Austin here this past April and now just pursuing a lot of different things. But my main focus right now is the pro wrestling.
And you just had your first pro wrestling match?
Yeah, about a month ago, I had my first pro wrestling match. If you guys watch WWE, you probably know who Goldust is. Dustin Rhodes, who's now with AEW, is my coach. He's the person I'm training under. So I just had my first match under him about a month ago.
Dang, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
What was that? What was that experience like?
You know, I had trained pro wrestling for about 3 months back in Arizona, and then I had that major knee injury that we'll talk about later. So I took about 8 months out of the ring and out of to the jujitsu mats and everything just to get that rehab back to where I could actually be athletic again. But after I moved here, one of my good friends that's with AEW right now, his name is Brian Cage. He's on their active roster. He had told me that Dustin has a school up in Leander, which is like northern Austin, and they said they were taking in like new people for like their camps that they kind of do every 3 months or so. And so the first spot that they had open, I applied for it and thankfully got in and then went through that whole process. And then now I'm actively training underneath Dustin and the coaches there to now continue to build my pro wrestling resume.
Awesome. And is that like the vision you have for yourself for the future?
Yeah, so ultimately my goal is to be a superhero to millions of kids. So
Dang.
for me in particular, the goal within that is to be able to build or expand upon a platform that allows for that. And for me, if I'm looking at how my life comes full circle, I had started watching pro wrestling when I was 3. Bill Goldberg's my hero. So now being at an age to where it's actually athletically possible for me to do something like that, it makes sense to strive for that goal, that superhero type goal, be the Goldberg to a kid that he was for me within something like pro wrestling, because I didn't necessarily grow up thinking I was going to be a pro wrestler, but as time has gone on and I've attained a bunch of different skill sets within lifting and jujitsu and whatnot, it makes more and more sense. And I actually really like pro wrestling because to me, it allows me to demonstrate all my skill sets as opposed to just the grappling or just the strength or even just the aesthetic. So it's kind of like everything in one.
Yeah, man. There's
Thank
so
you.
much to dive into. So I used to watch wrestling as a kid, so man, I totally get that.
Oh, yeah.
I love how you have essentially, man, it's not like you want to be a WWE wrestler for the sake of being a wrestler. It's like you have something that is much high, what would you call it? A virtue much higher than that. And man, that's definitely a way to lead by,
Thank you. I
which is
appreciate it.
which is
Yeah. Bill
awesome.
Goldberg, my childhood hero. A lot of times when he talks about how getting into the business for him was to set an example for his son. And even before his son was born was just to be a superhero and a hero to millions of kids. He did a lot of work for like Make-A-Wish and stuff like that. And even as a kid growing up, when I was watching him in particular, I was one of those kids that had a huge impact from just seeing how he was as a human being, how he was as a champion within the ring. And before you even realize what, the choreography behind pro wrestling is, as a kid, you're very impressionable. So you start to believe everything that you see. And Goldberg was, in my opinion, the best person at the time to look up to in regards to the total encapsulation of what a man should be. And so my entire life up until this point, that's basically everything I've tried to work for in regards to my physique or my athletic endeavors. And now moving forward, pro wrestling, as you said, wasn't necessarily like this dying passion that I had as a kid. I enjoyed watching it when Goldberg was there, but I didn't necessarily grow up with this idea that I was going to be a pro wrestler. But as time went on, I started to kind of see and like, I think I can do this. I think I can do this. And as I started to formulate more specific goals for myself long term, it became the obvious pick.
Yeah, man. And you're saying how pro wrestling can be it's like the perfect combination of all these skill sets you have. Well, my stepdad is a wrestling fanatic.
Wow.
He actually mentioned AEW to me
Oh, that's awesome.
today. And I was like, well, I don't even know what that is. And
AEW would be like the main competitor to WWE. You could compare it to like Bellator to UFC kind of. But I would say like
right.
AEW is gaining a lot more popularity now, though, to be
Gotcha.
honest. Yeah.
So, but he listens to wrestling podcasts. He wants to do his own. He's really into it. And one day, so I used to watch it when I was little, but then I got out of it. And I came back to visit my parents. They live up in north of Dallas, so it's like a 5-hour drive. And their thing is to sit down and eat and put on TV. And
Nice.
They were watching pro wrestling, and I was eating, watching it with them. And I was just like watching it. I was like, oh, I don't want to watch wrestling. I was like, well, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're watching it, and I was just like, man, this is what we do in jiu-jitsu, but way more entertaining to watch. I was like, they're doing all my best moves all in succession.
Right. Yeah, yeah,
It's like I might be able to do like 2 or 3 of those, but they're doing all the best ones. It looks good.
Yep.
And I was like, I totally get it. It's like
Mhm.
a jiu-jitsu match can be really boring.
Right.
I'll watch it, I do breakdowns of high-level jiu-jitsu matches.
Mhm.
Dude, I'll watch a 20-minute match and then not get anything that I can really pull from it,
Right.
Hand fighting, it's just all, you can just say it's a little monotonous.
Mhm.
But the wrestling, man, it's like you're seeing the coolest stuff choreographed. It's still, very much real, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're getting hurt, they're hitting each other. And so, yeah, it really like synced to me. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to hate on wrestling anymore because I get why people watch it.
Yeah, I always tell people, especially people that are new to it, it's just really dependent upon what lens you're watching it through. So, for example, a lot of times I think the initial mistake for most people is that they approach pro wrestling and they watch it through like a UFC lens. They're expecting to see something more UFC oriented because, I mean, you see 2 guys going at it and you just automatically think that they should be actually fighting. And then so when you get less of that per se, then that's where some of the disdain or whatnot comes towards the sport. However, when you watch it through a lens of like, this is basically a live action movie, like I had it compared to the other day as like any typical superhero film in regards to how it's set up, the moves sometimes, like it's very similar. And so what a lot of people don't appreciate is the ability to commit to all that real time, a lot of times with very little planning, just through how skillful these guys are through obviously their charisma, their athleticism, and just their ability to paint a story within a match. That's something that not even myself have a full understanding at being a beginner, but I can at least appreciate it because I see and I'm around the high level of people that have made it work and made it famous. So
Yeah. The Rock was just on Joe Rogan. He was kind of talking a little bit about that.
he's the Gordon Ryan of charisma. That's what I told someone the other day. Yeah, he is.
And it's so crazy because he was the complete opposite, where the whole country hated him at one point.
Yeah.
Man,
Yeah.
that's crazy.